At one point, all video games were small. Small in size, in length, and in production. It was pretty unusual for a game on, say, the Nintendo Entertainment System to be made by more than 10 or so people. And then games got bigger, and bigger still. Final Fantasy VII famously took anywhere from around 100 to 150 people to develop, which was completely unheard of at the time. Around the late 90s, most games averaged around 20 people to make. Red Dead Redemption 2 would go on to take 2,000 people to make, making it one of the largest and most expensive productions in history. But no matter how many people it took to make them, games were, and still largely are, exclusive. It was difficult, lengthy, and expensive to put games on a console. It was a process that was tightly regulated and monitored, and in some cases it had to be. Games have to be specifically developed and tested. Were there vulnerabilities in it that could break a delicate and expensive piece of hardware? How would ratings boards categorize it? But more often than not, games were designed to be exclusionary. Do you have the money or clout to get a development kit? Do you need to work with a publisher to even get your foot in the door? Could your game compete in the market with the people who made a game for the machine that they also made? Console games were cutthroat and ruthless. It's hard to imagine now, but even on the open-ended personal computer, retailers like Steam kept their platform tightly regulated. This was a major reason why such a cult of personality developed around the platform at the time. Because they only allowed the best, and keeping out undesirable products keeps a company's image up. Independent games by bedroom coders and weekend warriors didn't get a spot at the table, and languished as .exe files burnt to disks, or Flash games uploaded to Newgrounds, or ROM hacks shared around forums. Video games were a prohibitive, exclusive club, and if you weren't in it, that was the end of the conversation. But then a shift started, very slowly. In 2004, at the tail end of the original Xbox's retail lifespan, Microsoft introduced a new idea. What if they take advantage of their revolutionary online service to offer smaller games? Ones that weren't just easy to send over internet waves, but were cheap for consumers to bite the bullet on. This new program was fittingly called Xbox Live Arcade. Some of these arcade games were literal ports of classic coin-ops, like Gauntlet and Mrs. Pac-Man. Some of them were ports of PC games from every suburban mom's favorite, PopCap, like Zuma and Bejeweled. But they were all little, bite-sized experiences, made and sold on the cheap. There weren't many of them at the time, but when the successor to the Xbox arrived a year later, the market exploded. Not just with ports of old games, but new small games became in vogue. Castle Crashers, Limbo, Fez, Splosion Man, Braid, and more would reach commercial and critical success. Some of them became household names that were ingrained with Microsoft and the Xbox brand. And this was what brought independent games to the forefront. Seeing the success of Microsoft, other companies followed suit. Sony began building up their PlayStation brand with exclusive Japanese imports of low-budget or AA games to be put on the PlayStation Store. Valve started a new crowd approval process called Steam Greenlight, allowing consumers to vote on the games they wanted to see on the platform. Even Nintendo loosened their draconic grip on their exclusive and manicured machines, and saw success from console ports of Japanese indie hits like Cave Story on the WiiWare service. This gave small developers the extra push to get their games on consoles. Once an insurmountable task. The gates were opened. Just a little bit though, not completely. You still had to go through the approval process, find a publisher, and be willing to jump through a lot of the same arbitrary hoops set up by console manufacturers and digital storefront owners. One notable example is the Xbox Live Arcade file size being capped at 50 megabytes in 2007, a totally arbitrary number, up until Konami got an exclusive pass to nearly double that upload size at over 95 megabytes to bring Castlevania Symphony of the Night to Xbox Live Arcade. Of course, this is completely justifiable since every console manufacturer should be doing everything in their power to make sure Symphony of the Night is playable on it, but it was a sore spot for some developers until it was eventually upgraded. It might have been a bit more equitable and inviting, but you still have to play ball with the big boys, same as before. And then Microsoft tried to shift it again. In 2008, premium members of Microsoft's freeware development kit, XNA Game Studio, got access to a special closed beta. This beta expanded on the already included 360 development kit to allow for special community games. Eventually, the project was revealed to be Xbox Live Indie Games, games that anyone could upload for sale on Xbox Live. The rules for these were pretty simple and straightforward. They had to be made in XNA, they had to get peer-reviewed by others on the platform, it had to abide by pretty basic platform rules, so no explicit sexuality or hate speech, it had to be 150 megabytes or less, and it had to cost either $1, $3, or $5 US. That was it. They weren't even officially rated. The historically restrictive Australian Ratings Board actually barred the service in Australia because they couldn't rate them all and couldn't abide with unrestricted content flooding storefronts. But despite the loss of the Oceania market, Microsoft promised a 70-30 split in favor of the developers for selling their games on the storefront. And for all those kitty cutters and keyboard warriors, making and selling a game was cheap, easy, and potentially profitable with one of the most successful consoles at the time. There was no one to tell you no, and millions of kids with leftover Xbox Live points in their account eager to play some more games on the cheap. The limits were few, and the potential was massive. So how did this perfect, unrestricted, free market of gaming ideas turn out? How do you think? It was garbage. Turns out letting a bunch of people make whatever they want with virtually no restrictions meant you had to sift through a lot of trash to find anything worthwhile. Now, there were some worthwhile gems in there, a few diamonds in the rough that achieved success on the platform and developed a modest following outside of the indie arcade scene, but most of it was just awful. Asset flips, knockoffs, things that were hardly even games, just awful stuff. It was no surprise at all that the Xbox Live indie game platform had a huge reputation for being a cesspit of trash. But cheap trash. The kind of trash you walk to a fast food place or local diner for at 2 in the morning. Experiences that, for a teen in the early 2010s, were just enough of a thrill to make some bang for very, very little of your buck. To put this into perspective, as of 2017, the most successful game on the platform was Castle Miner Z, an uglier, worse version of Minecraft in nearly every way. But even after Minecraft would come out on the 360 a year later and reached its zenith of popularity as a cultural icon, Castle Miner Z still did incredibly well. It has the prestigious honor of being the first game on the platform to reach 1 million paid downloads. Why? Because it was cheaper. 8-year-old little Jimmy doesn't have a PC rig to play Minecraft Bed Wars with his bros, but he could maybe experience something similar with this game. It's the sort of thing that mobile games would find success with soon afterwards. Cheap, imitation, garbage. Easy to swallow, hard to stomach. But before Castle Miner Z, there was another bestseller at the time. A game that you would never guess was critically acclaimed. IGN and Machinima's Inside Gaming both called it their favorite indie game of 2009. They liked it more than Spelunky. By the end of 2009, it had sold a record-breaking 200k units and made its sole developer over $215,000, after Microsoft's 30% revenue fee, for a game that cost $1. And there was absolutely nothing about it that made it stand out in the digital storefront. It looked just like everything else, and everything else was pretty bad. If you stumbled across it, and even if you bought it, and maybe played it for just a moment, you would never guess that it deserved any acclaim. A real, genuine diamond in the rough. Before you even get to the primitive presentation and loud, screeching singing, backed with a type of music I can only call teen noise, you'd see the name in the title screen. I made a game with zombies in it. My hindsight isn't terrific, so I have a hard time telling if gamers thought this was l'epic bacon laser no problem, or if developer James Silva pushed it a little too hard and they all got in on the joke. But it is a strange, self-aware joke, and James Silva was no fool, and only sort of an amateur. He was the winner of a contest held by Microsoft in 2007, where he received $10,000 and an exclusive pass to the Inner Circle with an Xbox Live Arcade publishing contract. He would go on to use his Microsoft prize to create The Dishwasher: Dead Samurai in 2009, a game that I'll happily admit is not for me, with a visual style and soundtrack that dates it pretty firmly in 2009, but I won't deny that it is a technically competent game. It functions and plays well enough. It has a visual style and aesthetic. It's not out of the realm of possibility that someone has a deep, abiding nostalgia for this game. And while I might not let them touch the aux cord in a long car ride, I wouldn't fault them for enjoying the game. There is love and effort put into The Dishwasher, and that shows, even without this story of a one-man dev team and his golden ticket. But I made a game with zombies in it does not show that. It's cheap and grating, and the game makes no effort to hide this. Unlike a lot of other media that relishes in letting the audience know how cheap and bad it is, though, this doesn't overstay its welcome. There's only a few verses of the song, and they're sung kinda funny throughout. I wouldn't fault anyone for not liking it, but it's worth a little chuckle in my mind. But then something really weird happens. The game gets kinda good. The music starts to shift genres, going from the goofy, grating noise to a fun guitar riff, then a prog rock accompaniment, then psychedelic funk, then hard screamo metal, and even more. All the while, the background changes to accompany it. In some ways, it almost feels like a precursor to Tetris Effect. After a while, it contrasts with the frantic pace of the gameplay to put the player in a sort of zen state. And on top of all of that, the gameplay is a totally competent, if not completely solid, twin-stick shooter. A Robotron 2049 for the modern era. Or the 2009 era, I guess. And it feels very good to control. Once you get the hang of it, you'll be drifting around zombies and snake and blobs to collect power-ups in a hectic dance to match the music. And just like Robotron or Smash TV, the game has the simple, addictive, high-score chasing element to it that kept kids pumping machines full of quarters back in the day. Once you get the hang of it, you just can't stop, and you keep coming back for it because of its high intensity and low commitment. Eventually you get into the rhythm of the game and you hardly need to focus on it. You just sort of vibe. Once the game makes sure that you get the joke, it just steps back and lets you experience raw gameplay for a while. It's almost therapeutic in its simplicity, but it can't last forever. Eventually, you'll die. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, but you will get a game over. And when you get booted back to the home screen, ready to start the game back up and try again, you'll hear the shrill tones of James Silva's voice and the discordant notes from his amplified guitar. And if you're like me, you'll stop and think, wait a minute, is this the same game? It's clever satire. It clearly addresses a problem, the problem being that Xbox Live indie games are bad, and then when it's at its fun, it pulls the curtain back just a little bit to show that maybe they aren't. Maybe giving people the freedom and resources to make something won't always produce the next big thing, but it doesn't mean we can't let anyone try. You can't judge a book by its cover, after all. There were several other successful games coming out of the Xbox Live indie game program, and unfortunately, there may have been several other amazing games swallowed up by the refuse. Ones that maybe weren't seen by anyone at all. And now they can never be seen again. Microsoft ended the Xbox Live indie game program in 2017 with the launch of the Xbox One and shuttered the storefront. Some games got ported to other systems, but not all of them. After all, it costs time and money to port games. And if indie developers didn't turn a profit on them on the indie storefront, why would they? Some games were trapped forever on the defunct Xbox Live indie storefront, never to be re-released again, including I Made a Game with Zombies in it. The teens of tomorrow with plenty of time and not a lot of money will never discover this game, or others that might have been like it, hidden in with all of the weird ephemera of this strange new system of entertainment delivery. Neither can anyone else, since the game can't be bought or played unless you've already downloaded it. It's kind of sad, but at the same time, I Made a Game with Zombies in it is a hyper-specific piece of ephemera. It's referencing an era and a system that is long gone today, so maybe kids now wouldn't even get it. Nowadays, nearly anyone can upload anything onto a digital storefront, and some of the most arbitrary divisions have been removed. For example, on the Xbox Series S, there's no longer a distinction between retail games, arcade games, and indie games. Now all Xbox games are under the same banner of the Xbox storefront. There are, and unfortunately will always be, barriers to game development. There will always be hoops to jump through to make games for consoles to appease the companies that own and maintain them. But there is just a little bit more room at the table now. It's easier than it has been in the past to make and publish games for consoles, and continues to be more and more accessible for every generation. And yes, opening the gates will let some garbage through. There will always be cheap asset flips, cash grabs, and detritus. But I'm okay with sifting through some of that if it means that games can get small once in a while. And those small games, the ones you might not even see, or notice, or think about, can have a big impact. And because of that, I'm willing to put up with some of the weird garbage that shows up on storefronts. Even if it means I have to see shit like this North Korean hentai visual novel on my Steam page. What the fuck?